A man walks into a Macau casino dressed like he owns it. He doesn't. He's just trying to remember who he used to be, or maybe what he aspired to be. That's the jumping off point of Netflix's latest release, a movie that looks like neon sin, sounds like quiet despair, and feels like watching someone gamble with their soul. Director Edward Berger, fresh off two back-to-back Best Picture nominees, All Quiet on the Western Front and Conclave, trades soldiers and clergymen for a loner with nothing left to lose. But does this transition, usually reserved for filmmakers like Paul Schrader or Nicholas Winding Refn, actually suit him? That's what we're going to find out on this episode. I'm Peter from Vinyl N Celluloid, and this is my review of Ballad of a Small Player. When this landed on Netflix, I wasn't sure what to expect. A moody gambler drama in 2025 felt like deja vu. Another man, another table, another metaphor. But about 10 minutes in, I realized Berger was playing a very different game. The movie's world, soaked in neon and teeming with silence, rejects the muted grays of the card counter and the moral ambiguity of the original The Gambler in favor of something more disorienting. A portrait of solitude that's simultaneously claustrophobic and infinite. What we are dealing here could be described as a cinematic Oreo, the shiny package that fits the mold of Nicholas Winding Refn's work, containing a celluloid cookie with a Schrader-esque filling, sandwiched between layers of Alexander Payne's sweet and empathetic pathos. But before I tell you all about the reasons why you should watch this movie, here's a quick recap. In Berger's latest movie, Colin Farrell plays Lord Doyle, an English gambler drifting through Macau's high roller underworld. A man running from debt, guilt, maybe from himself. He checks into luxury hotels he can afford, makes deals with people he shouldn't trust, and bets on luck as if it were divine intervention. It's not really about gambling. It's about that quiet, masculine ache that comes when you've lost everything and still can't walk away from the table. With the lines of credit drying up, Doyle's path crosses with the enigmatic Dao Ming, and after their encounter during the first night of the Ghost Festival, his luck is about to change, for better or worse. Now, when you watch Ballad of a Small Player, the first thing that hits you isn't the story, it's the control. And that's the first reason why this title stands out. Edward Berger shoots like a man terrified of chaos, which is ironic because every frame is about collapse. His previous movies, All Quiet on the Western Front and Conclave, were massive, orderly machines. Here, he throws that discipline into a pressure cooker. The war fields become baccarat tables, the confessions move from church pews to casino booths. He's still interested in guilt, but this time it's quieter, lonelier, and entirely self-inflicted. And the crazy part is, it works. The same discipline that made All Quiet feel suffocating makes this one feel strangely intimate. You can feel the director wrestling with the same problem Schrader's been obsessed with for decades: how to film a man who can't forgive himself. But where the taxi driver scribe reaches for theology and cigarettes, Berger goes for silence and distance. His faith isn't in God, it's in framing. Every slow pan, every reflection of a roulette wheel feels like a moral decision. He builds tension by refusing release. Scenes don't end, they fade out like a held breath. The result is hypnotic and suffocating at the same time. A style that says, I'm in control, the world isn't. Watching it, you realize this is what he's been building toward. A movie where discipline itself becomes the drama. And maybe that's why it works. Because the filmmaker isn't just directing a story about a gambler. He's directing like one. Calculated risk after calculated risk. Every cut, every silence, another coin tossed onto the table. Now, this direction translates immediately to the second highlight of the movie, the setting. Macau stands in for a more restrained playground than the usual anthems of sin, such as Las Vegas. The former colony isn't filmed like a location. It's shot like a mirage that knows you're watching it. The city glows in impossible colors: hot pinks, turquoise, sodium gold. Every surface reflects something, often Doyle himself. So you never know if you're seeing reality or another version of the same man refracted through glass. It's gorgeous, but it's also disorienting, like walking through a dream that keeps remembering it's a dream. Berger and his cinematographer James Friend use those reflections the way Schrader used diary entries to trap us inside someone's head. The camera doesn't move much, but when it does, it feels like a coin rolling across the table, following its own momentum. You start to wonder whether the film itself is gambling on what to show next. And that's the trick. You can't tell what's real, and the movie never tells you. One moment feels like a memory, the next like fantasy. It's the cinematic equivalent of chasing a streak. The more you watch, the more you start to think you might finally understand, right before the meaning slips away again. That uncertainty becomes its own kind of beauty, because in the director's hands, ambiguity isn't confusion, it's empathy. It's a space where the viewer and Doyle share the same fog. Neither of you knows where the next card will land, but both of you keep playing anyway. Now, they say absence makes the heart grow fonder, and perhaps it's the almost decade-long period we've gone through without a full feature helmed by Danish filmmaker Vinding Refn that made me appreciate this aspect of the movie even more. When it comes to the players in this story, we spot another highlight, albeit not a fully perfect one. Acting-wise, the movie has one fatal flaw, and that's how underused Tilda Swinton's Cynthia is. Her role is mildly entertaining but lacks depth, screen time, and purpose. Borderline cartoonish, Cynthia barely amounts to a plot device that keeps the action moving forward, with the Oscar-winning actress playing yet another version of her quirky, eccentric self. But redeeming this downside is Colin Farrell, and honestly, this might be one of the quietest performances of his career. Over the last few years, he's been slowly erasing that early 2000s movie star swagger. The guy who once sold chaos now sells stillness. After Yang hinted at it, the Banshees of Inisherin perfected it, and here he distills it to almost nothing. Farrell's Lord Doyle isn't a charming mess or a tortured genius. He's a man whose emotions have gone into depth. You see it in the way he orders a drink, like he's rehearsing normalcy, or the way he studies a hand of cards, as if numbers might forgive him. It's a performance through subtraction. Less gesture, less speech, more waiting. And the beauty of it is that the camera respects that emptiness. The director never pushes him for a reaction. He just lets Farrell's face do the heavy lifting. Those tiny twitches around the mouth, the delayed blinks, they tell you everything about a man who can't decide whether he wants to win or simply disappear. What's remarkable is how the stillness never feels passive. Farrell is using restraint as tension. He's playing Doyle like a note held just before it breaks and makes every small slip, a smirk, a crack in the voice, feel seismic. You keep leaning in, waiting for him to fall apart, and he never quite does. It's the kind of acting that pays dividends by daring you to stay patient. And in a movie about gambling, that's fitting. Farrell wins by folding first. Finally, Ballad of a Small Player wins big thanks to its ambition and penchant for excess. You see, the thing about Berger is that he doesn't seem to know when to stop, and that's what saves the film. Every idea that wanders through his head, grief, faith, addiction, luck as theology, ends up in the frame somewhere. The result should collapse under its own weight, and somehow it doesn't. Yes, the pacing drags. There are long, quiet stretches where you can feel the story testing your patience, but those pauses earn their keep. They make you sit with Doyle's inertia, feel the static in his thoughts. When the movie finally starts to move again, it's like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. There are missteps, of course. As I mentioned in the last section, Tilda Swinton's character drifts through the movie like a ghost from another script, elegant, perfectly lit, but narratively weightless. Yet even that misfire seems to underline the theme, beauty without purpose, form without soul. It's as if the filmmaker leaves her there to remind us that even the best players misjudge a hand now and then. What keeps the film from tipping into pretension is its sincerity. The director really believes in what he's showing you. The gambling, the silence, the neon haze, they're all metaphors for faith in disguise. the belief that meaning might still exist somewhere inside the noise. By the end, Doyle hasn't been redeemed. Not really. He's just learned how to keep living with the odds against him. And maybe that's enough, because that's the quiet miracle of Berger's cinema. He finds grace in exhaustion, poetry in people who've already run out of bets. So, in conclusion, no, Ballad of a Small Player won't work for everyone. But if you give it your full attention, it pays you back in atmosphere, in mood, in the slow, deliberate rhythm of a filmmaker who knows that control and chaos aren't opposites. They're dancing partners. And that man who walked into a Macau casino pretending like he owned the place, he lives with nothing but the illusion that he ever could. And somehow, that feels like victory.